Yeah, so that was the unfortunate thing. Yeah, I was on the very first day of classes. But luckily, you know, for us and for iCollege, I'm teaching online. So for me, it wasn't a problem at all. I could just, you know, be online at the bed and breakfast where we were in northern Georgia. You know, and Bill, my husband was teaching astronomy here in Clarkson campus, and he could post an assignment in the iCollege class. So yeah, it was all pretty exciting. And while because we didn't want to get stuck in traffic, we waited. I think it was on a Monday. It was on a Monday. Yeah, and we came back, I think on Tuesday. We didn't want to come back the same day because with all the driving. Yeah, it was quite the logistics. Yeah, we have, let's go here. There's solar glasses. And actually, solar eclipse shade is more of a misnomer because these are glasses, the solar glasses, you can watch the sun at any time. Because they're rated to like take the full solar radiation, and if you look through them, you really shouldn't be seeing anything. You should only see the sun through these things, the full sun. So you need to wear these when you see any sunlight coming directly from the face of the sun. You can only take them off during totality. But that's sort of, you know, people get that confused because it says, well, it says solar eclipse shades, so I should be able to put them on during totality, and then no, those are solar glasses. But yeah, actually also they're for this here from their college. So I had a whole bunch of them from Savannah, and was able to distribute some to my friends and family, even to the point where, you know, coming close to the eclipse when Amazon or places were charging $40 for a pair, and I still had a couple reserved for getting my Zumba instructor. I put them on the boat with just her name, and he put that on her in her mailbox, and yeah, not saying what was in it. I didn't want it to get stolen. So yeah, it was quite ridiculous there. Last few days leading up to the eclipse. Well, before we get into it, what actually went down, just a little bit of a primer on what eclipses are. So, well, we have two types of eclipses. And unfortunately, the video is over the lunar eclipse, but we're not really going to talk much about the lunar eclipse today. But so there's a solar eclipse and there's a lunar eclipse. So which object is being blocked during the solar eclipse? Okay, and then, yeah, let's not worry much about the lunar eclipse here. Well, which object does the blocking in the solar eclipse? The moon. The moon moving in between the Earth and the Sun. Okay, and what lunar phase does the moon have to be in order to be able to move in between the Earth and the Sun? Has to be new, and I'm glad my astronomy colleagues know this answer. Okay, how about maybe not astronomy folks answering? Okay, well, from where on Earth can we see a solar eclipse? I mean, where from the night side, the day side, all of the day side, or how did it work out? If you think back, could it all be on the day side? It has to be on the day side because, you know, it has to happen while the sun is in the sky. But can everybody on the day side see the solar eclipse when it's happening? No. This was the great American solar eclipse, and most people in America could see it, but it was just like not Alaska or not Hawaii. You know, it had to be the U.S. 49 state. What did they say? I'm from Germany, so the lower 48 or whatever. Okay, so and most of the people could see the eclipse, but you know, part of the north and part of the south they couldn't. It has to do with the fact that the moon is actually not all that big, and it's pretty far away from Earth. So when the sun shines on the moon, which is in between the Earth and the sun, then the shadow that the moon casts on the Earth is actually not all that big. And it moves, the core of the shadow, for where you can see the total, you know, the total blockage of the sun, That, in our case, it was only 71 miles across. And then we have, of course, a wider region which happens for Atlanta or even New York City or Washington. They could see the moon partially blocking the sun, but they couldn't see the total solar eclipse. Okay, well, just a little quick reminder here. So this is sort of the Earth in orbit around the sun, and you can see how the moon, as the Earth orbits the sun, the moon orbits the Earth. So which lunar phase would that be? Starting out here on the left. Yeah. This would be new, exactly. So then waxing, crescent, quarter, waxing, gibbous, so it goes all the way around to full, and then comes back to new. And a misconception is, with a lot of people, oh yeah, we have lunar phases because the moon goes through the Earth's shadow, but that's actually not really true. When you're orbiting the sun, any object that orbits the sun, half of you is always going to be lit, and that's your day sign. So the moon, half of the moon is always going to be lit up, and the other half of the moon is always going to be on the night side, or turned away from the sun, just like we here on Earth. And it just so happens, as you can see, half of the moon is always lit, but as the moon is orbiting Earth, we're just seeing different amounts of the day side of the moon. So during the new moon, we see none of the day side of the moon because the moon is entirely facing toward the sun, and what we see, there's no light that's being reflected back to us, and of course the sun is in the sky, so it's like there's no way we could see the new moon. But so then as the moon orbits, we get to see a little bit more, the waxing crescent, we see a little bit sliver of the day side. Quarter, we see more of the day side. Until full, we see all of the day side of the moon. And then it goes back to new. See, I have a little demo here. See where you can see half of Earth is always lit, half of the moon is always lit. Where's the sun in this demo? Yeah, on the right side. But it just depends on where the moon is in its orbit around the Earth with relation to the sun, how much of the daytime you can see. All right. This is kind of a neat demo that I found, a neat animation. It's sort of like from a perspective behind the Earth, but yeah, just watch it. It's pretty neat. So it's sort of like a side view of the phases. And you can also, it shows very nicely how quickly the Earth has to spin, because between new moon and quarter moon, it's about a week. So the Earth would spin 7 times.
I just probably have 2 questions, but I'm a biologist.
That's okay.
So the moon is not actually spinning, so we're seeing, is that correct?
Well, the moon is spinning is actually a synchronized rotation. So for every one orbit of the moon around the Earth, it also spins exactly once.
So we only are seeing one side.
We only see one side. And that's also why this thing about the dark side of the moon is actually also doesn't make any sense. Because we always see the same side of the moon, and that goes through its day side when the full moon or night over its rotation. So I think what people mean with the dark side is actually the far side. But of course, when we have new moon and the side that we see is dark, even though it's the same side, the far side that we never see is totally lit up with sunlight.
Is that something that is unique to our moon, or to all moons in our solar system?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the smaller moons tend to be tidally locked. Initially when the system formed, they might have have their own spin rate, but because of the gravitational tidal forces, you get a bulge, suspension. So the Earth bulges out, the Moon bulges out, or the planet and the satellite. And those bulges, they want to over time, align themselves with the sun. And if you have a smaller body like a satellite, that's going to happen quicker and it's going to be locked in. With the Earth, our rotation is actually also slowing down. But because the Earth is much bigger and has a lot more momentum, so it's sort of like the Moon wants to keep our tidal bulge directly across, but because the Earth has momentum, it pulls it ahead. But then, the Moon sort of pulls back on the bulge and slowing down the Earth's rotation. But it's, we don't have to worry about that anytime soon, so it's still going to be a few.
How long would it take for the Earth to tidal bulge?
A couple of billion years or even longer. Yeah, I think the sun is going to go.
The atmosphere will be full of water, and maybe it'll kill us way back.
Yeah.
A million years.
So the sun's turning into a red giant, So we should worry about that. I think the rate at which climate change is going, that's something we should worry about. People always worry about getting struck by lightning, or it's like worry about crossing the street, look at what's in front of your face. So we've had a couple of hurricanes at our doorstep, so we may want to worry about that before the sun turning into a red giant. Okay, see, there's another thing. We don't have eclipses. We have a new moon and a full moon every month. Well, why don't we have a solar and a lunar eclipse every month? Turns out that the plane in which the Earth orbits around the sun is slightly inclined, or I should say the plane in which the moon orbits around the Earth is slightly inclined with respect to the plane that the Earth orbits around the sun. So it means that a lot of the time it can happen that the moon is full or new when it is either above the Earth, above, of course, meaning relative, or below the Earth's orbital plane. So that way it doesn't really interact, with the Earth's shadow, or the moon's shadow will pass underneath the Earth, or vice versa. So we can only get eclipses when the moon happens to be new or full, when it actually passes through the Earth's orbital plane. This line here, where the two orbital planes intersect, that's called the line of nodes. So the moon has to be on the line of nodes when it is new or full, and then it can pass directly in between the moon and the Earth and the sun in order for us to see a solar eclipse. And that happens about 2 to 3 times a year. So that's why it's not really common. Okay, here's actually a NASA simulation of the exact alignment of the eclipse for 2017. Before I start the simulation, this shaded, bluish shaded circle indicates the closest approach that the moon can have. Because the moon's orbit is not quite circular. It's a little bit elliptical, so there are times when it's a little bit further away when it's new, for example, or a little bit closer when it's new. And that can also make the difference between the moon being able to completely cover the sun from the perspective of us on Earth, as we had in 2017, or if the moon happens to be at its furthest point when it's new, passing from the sun, then it won't be in the sky, it'll be a little bit smaller, so it won't quite cover up the sun, and we get what's called an annular solar eclipse. So for 2017, it was not the closest it could be, but it was still close enough to produce a total solar eclipse. And then the shading here is different because part of the moon's orbital plane is tilted below, and the other part of the moon's orbital plane is tilted above. So that's sort of what the shading means. And then this line here would be the line of nodes. Okay, so by the way, this is to scale. Because whenever we see images of the sun and the moon, they're usually right next to each other, and also some images that I have in the talk, just so you can actually make out the Earth and make out the moon and make out the shadow. Everything is blown up, but the moon is usually presented much too close to the Earth. This is to scale. So here we have the Earth, here we have the moon. So they did that on purpose. It might be harder to see, but it gives you the realistic size relationship. Oh no, don't freeze. Okay. Well, they slow it down. So coming up on the eclipse. There we are. And you can really see the tip of the moon's shadow. That's why when the moon is at its furthest point, we only get an angular eclipse. So it's really set up just right that only a few people can see it. And you're further away, and we would only see angular eclipses. We wouldn't see a total solar eclipse. Yes.
I just want to, I don't know if I understand this correctly. So you said it happens 2 or 3 times a year because the planes have to coincide, and at the same time it has to be oriented so that it's a new moon, the moon's right in the Earth and Sun.
Yes, so the moon has to be new when it crosses the intersection of those 2 planes. Yes.
Am I correct to say that those 2 planes would actually meet 24 times a year?
Well, okay, the planes are fixed. So they are just like, geometric direction. So the planes are fixed, and the line of nodes is actually also fixed when we, let's see, let's get back to that slide. Because I don't know how to get back to that slide.
Yes, so that means there's 2 times per calendar year where we meet the line of nodes and this remains constant.
2 or 3, yeah.
How 3? Why not just 2?
Actually, I haven't quite worked out the, oh wait a minute, I need to, so let's get back to,
You mean like 2 to 3 occurrences?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
yeah, I
sense.
see where to go.
As long as it's close enough to intersect there.
Oh, okay. Okay, so, so basically this line of nodes, as, right here, the line of nodes would be here. So, this intersection, the line of nodes, doesn't always point towards the sun. So most of the time, it doesn't when the Earth moves around the sun. It's just, well, in this case, here and right here, it would point towards the sun. Now the thing is, you can get a lunar eclipse. It doesn't have to be totally exactly on the line of nodes. It has to be just close enough to the line of nodes, and you might still get. It has to be during the new phase, but it can be a little bit off. So that probably explains the 2 to 3 times a year.
So the 3 would be a pair of eclipses a month apart. Or
no, actually, pair of eclipses. You can get pairs of eclipses. You cannot get pairs of solar eclipses a month apart. You can actually get a pair of eclipses because it would be a pair of a solar and a lunar eclipse.
Yeah.
So if, for example, the moon is close enough to the line of nodes to produce a solar eclipse, then 2 weeks later, or 2 weeks earlier, it could have also been close enough to produce a lunar eclipse. So see, there's always, because it doesn't have to be exact, there's like a little bit of a range there. That's why, sometimes if, one eclipse is barely close enough to produce that one eclipse, it may not be close enough 2 weeks later to produce the other eclipse. See, that's why, because there's a range of variability, that's why you also get like those 2 to 3 times a year, rather than just, exactly 6 months apart. Let's see, let me switch back. If you want to show, well, let's just do the shadows really quickly. Okay, well, what I did up here is I had a little goofy little figure, like a USB light, like an astronaut, and there were 2 balls for the eyes of the astronaut. So what I wanted to show here is an extended light source. So the sun, because it has a pretty large face, is an extended light source. It's a point light source. So we get light coming from one end of the sun and the other end from like a whole area. And these 2 light sources show I had a pen that I held I used a wide sheet of paper as a screen. But even with those 2 lights shining onto the pen, you could actually see there's a region of total shadow. So where if any observer stood here, they wouldn't be able to see the light source at all. But if you move over a little bit to the left, then that observer would see the right part of the light source blocked, but not the left. So we'd still see the left light source, and vice versa. It's pretty much the same for the shadow that the moon produces. And here, this is not to scale. So the shadow of the moon, there are lots, it spreads out all over the Earth, and there are lots of places where you can see part of the sun blocked. But there's only really the tip of the moon's shadow, the umbra, the total shadow, from where you can see all of the sun blocked. Over here, and okay, I have to speed up a little bit. But okay, so this was the path that the total solar eclipse took. Here's Atlanta, and you can see, it was actually all of the American continent that could see some sort of eclipse. Yeah, even Alaska got a partial eclipse. But the path itself is only 71 miles wide. So even people, living close to the path of totality, if they stayed where they were in Atlanta, we saw 97%, but not total. They all have to travel into the path of the total solar eclipse. Okay, yeah, just like another little side note, the shadow itself moves at 1,400 miles per hour, and that's about twice the speed of sound. That's why even planes, there are planes that are chartered, they try to keep up with it as long as possible to stay in the path of totality longer, but they're not going to manage to keep up with the shadow itself. But if you're put in one location, for our eclipse, where the moon was not at its closest approach to Earth, the totality lasted about 2.5 minutes, but you had to be smack in the center of the path of totality. If you're like at the edge of the path of totality, then it would be shorter, maybe 30 seconds or something like that. Okay, so this is our little adventure here. I like that stretching. Yeah, we actually, this was, speaking of getting ready years ago, so 2024 is going to be the next solar eclipse, and you may already want to start planning for it. Well, it turns out that years before, I think we were still GBC at that time, well, Bill is playing, what is it called, roller hockey, and one of his teammates talked about having a bed and breakfast in northern Georgia in Raven Gap. And we're thinking, well, wait a minute, Raven Gap. And then we went to look at, holy crap, this is the path of totality. So we talked to him, okay, we definitely want to make reservations for that weekend. So he kept us in mind, we kept reminding him, but that was like a couple of years before, or I don't know. But then he said, okay, now, that was like a year before, now you really have to tell me if you're coming or not, because, other people obviously want to book those rooms too. So we're like, okay, yes, we're definitely coming. It's actually very lovely bed and breakfast. I can highly recommend it. So, yeah, let me just cut to the chase here. What we didn't know when we made our arrangements, since we made them so long ahead of time, is that down the road, in a school stadium, Georgia State University had also planned this event. So they were in a big school stadium set up, with 6 professors or several graduate students, You know, the tickets for the parking were free, but people needed tickets because they would expect a lot of crowds to come in. You know, they had set up several demos and music and everything, so it was like the whole deal. So this is the write-up that I found from the way people experienced it in the stadium. The sun was a black hole, backlit in silver. Okay, this is written up by an astronomer. And for 2 minutes and 38 seconds, people shouted, cried, stared, open-mouthed, and laughed in disbelief. Parents held their children, whispering in their ears, fingers pointed upward. Even the astronomers struggled to articulate their emotions, several times resorting to a simple, wow. But it's really like that. And I'm sure, you know, most astronomers who were there, especially the graduate students, they may never have experienced the total solar eclipse for themselves. You can't, you're human. You're going to have a reaction to that. Okay, well, this is just our write-up, but instead of the write-up, I wanted to show you our experience. So for the sake of brevity, I had to start, what I did was I set up, based on advice that I've read, you know, don't worry about like taking the thing yourself, you're going to miss the whole thing if you're just looking at it through the camera. So what I did, I set up a smartphone somewhere, you know, in the bushes, and then just sort of aimed it at the crowd. Well, our crowd was just a handful of people that were guests at the bed and breakfast. We barbecued and everything, so it's totally cool. We loved it. But you know, it takes a while to proceed, so I started the video when it's already fairly dark. Oh yeah, the noise in the background is the waterfall. They're a working mill. They mine their own flour. So it's really good because like totally dark and nice and cool. Because,
Like that.
yeah. When it happens, and that's why people are disappointed when they see 97%. They think, oh my God, it's going to get really dark. But you know, even 99.
You hear the instant real,
Yeah. When you have,
loud, like they was so loud and the girls went back and forth.
they go into night. Oh, coming night, and they go to start their nighttime routine. At one point, Bill, my husband, he's right here. He got up in a chair because we were in this really lush, I mean, it was beautiful, but lush right next to the waterfall, so we couldn't really see all the way out to the horizon. But he got up on a chair and, you know, if you're like out in the wide open, you can see along the horizon, you can still see the, like the sunset, really, you know, and then you can also see the color shadow past the sun. So we couldn't see that from that location because like the lush gardens surrounded by shrubs and mountains with waterfall on one side. But yeah, we could see, you know, a star or a planet, whatever it was. And Bill actually brought binoculars. So during the totality, it is safe to look even with binoculars at the disk covered of sun. So of course you have to be like well before the totality ends. You got to put your binoculars away. So that's something lay people I wouldn't really advise to do. Because even a little bit of the sun's rays, especially during the total solar eclipse, your eyes will like fully dilate because the time is long enough to do that. And then when the first ray of light comes back, your retina is totally vulnerable, and it can really damage your retina. If you recognize it quick enough, then the damage won't be so bad and it'll heal up. But we don't have any pain receptors in our retina. So you don't actually realize when it happens, that it really happened. I don't know how far we're into it. Oh, yeah, it's coming back. And then, yeah, as soon as you see light coming from the sun again, from the main phase of the sun, like what they call the diamond ring, then you have to put your glasses back on. And this is actually real time. That's how quickly it changes. And of course, then the heat came back. It was so nice and comfortable. It's like, 70s, oh, this is nice. And then the heat came back to 90s. We had to take turns going into the shadow just to cool off. Yeah, it's true. Yes.
Yeah, I was watching it in Tallulah Falls, and something that I observed during the eclipse is that it's not constant. It keeps changing as your eyes are adapting to the dark. So what I observed was that my perception of the horizon that I could see, it kept growing and growing and growing throughout the eclipse. And so by the end, I could see streamers out to a radius of like 5 to 6 solar radii away. And so like the solar flares, I couldn't see those initially. I could see them later towards the end.
You just look through the eclipse glasses, or did you have any?
No,
or did you have binoculars or?
No,
projectors? So just with your naked eye, you could see like prominences and stuff.
There weren't any. I didn't see any prominences. There was a bit of a red, or maybe it was. I don't know. But it was just a little bit bright around the edge of the moon, but it was red. It was pretty clear.
So you didn't have any moisture come in? I mean, yeah, you can...
It was clear where I was.
Yeah, you can see here, we had during totality, more, it was a little bit cloudy to begin with, and then, because it got cooler and we had a high humidity, we probably got condensation and mist. So that may be another reason why your perception of the corona might change. For us, it did, because, we had like clouds moving in and out.
Well, it was linear.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Oh, yeah.
One thing that was interesting were the shadows. You're used to in the evening or the morning, you have a very long shadow. And you have a shadow that was like at your feet.
Yeah.
It's very peculiar.
Well, this is the sun spotter here in action. So I borrowed that from Clarkson campus. So what I did, this is actually used for a full solar observation. Where you have the sunlight coming in to this lens here, and then through a couple of mirrors, it's projected on this sheet of paper, and students or you or whoever's interested can trace out the sun and trace the sunspots. So it makes a large enough magnification for you to see sunspots. And I wasn't sure whether it was going to show anything during totality, and it didn't. But we could see up until the very end, we could see the partial phases. And I switched from photo to video. So it's basically the same time span, just the camera. I think I keep moving it because I want to keep it in the picture. And then, nothing. Then the light level is just too dim for this setup to produce an image. And of course, we had a couple of clouds too, but now it's
a good example of how bright it is in your surroundings, though, when it's like at 99%.
Okay, and then I cut it out, and then we get the diamond ring, the first little of sun from the full thing.
Is that reason because out of the picture?
See, and of course, that movement right at that moment, I think that there was even like a baby speed there, but I was like, oh my God, it's out of the picture. But I was really excited about how well you can see all the partial phases and the details, just with the sunspot setup. And earlier during the eclipse, I took a video because we could see sunspots. So I took a video of how the shadow of the moon started passing over the sunspot. So I thought that was pretty cool too. Well, another thing, I don't know if you can see this like smear effect here. Well, when the shadow, when it's like 99.9 or something, so the seconds or the minutes, well, actually the 30 seconds leading up to totality or right after, this is sort of, you don't have a whole area of light. It's more like a set of point light sources. So you might get an effect. I don't know if you saw the totality, if you saw any shadow bands by any chance. Like if you look at a smooth surface, like a wall of a house or driveway or something.
Like a direction grading version?
Well, no, it would be more like, it would be very dynamic. So there's another thing that a friend of mine saw, and I actually emailed with a specialist in eclipses who watches and tries to capture shadow bands, but they're so low contrast and so dynamic and so brief, and you have to have the right weather conditions too, that they're very hard to capture. Yeah, I think that's were you talking about that during the totality? No, actually the partial phases. If you're like in an area with a lot of shrubs, or you bring like a slotted spoon, or even go with your fingers and have the sun, make like little pinhole, a whole bunch of little pinhole cameras basically, then every little hole, every little nook and cranny will give you an image of the partiality. So that was pretty cool. You can see it in the chart, you can even see it here on the sidewalk. You're just like, you're in awe of what nature can do. So, it's like a little kid, oh my God, look at this, oh my God, look at this, oh, it's so cool. This is actually Polly. I talked to Polly Boker. She's a geology professor on Newton campus. But she's also, she has a photography business in the hobby. I think it was started on the hobby, and now she takes some pretty amazing pictures, usually, family events. But she traveled to Tennessee. It was in Dayton, Tennessee, and took pictures of the totality. And yeah, you probably saw something similar like that. So the way the corona was shaped, because every solar eclipse is due to processes on the sun, because the sun is a very dynamic kind of object. It's dynamic. The corona can take on different shapes, from like one eclipse several years earlier to another eclipse. And actually being able to predict how the corona will turn out, if scientists are able to do that, they can actually refine their models about what goes on the solar surface, which could affect, of course, whenever the sun radiates out into space, can affect our space weather and our satellites and all that. So it's kind of important. Okay, I don't know what time it is. So in Metro Atlanta, it was just 97%, and I think a lot of folks were a little bit disappointed because, they thought 97%, all of us get really dark. And I know friends of my son who went into the stadium at their middle school, they were like, oh, it didn't really get dark at all, and this was such a bummer. And of course, another misconception people have is when they put on the solar glasses, they think it's going to magnify and they get this big, beautiful image. No, you still see the sun exactly the same size as before. You can just look directly at it. So I guess there were a lot of people who were very disappointed. Okay, this is actually from a fellow hockey mom friend of mine. She was working downtown in Buckhead, and so while the eclipse went on, everybody went out in the parking lot or parking garage, and you had solar glasses, or they used the technique. I think someone just grabbed a tape from the break room, punched a hole in it. But you can see those are very tiny images. And also looking at it through like the solar glasses, you can't really see all that much. But then on the other hand, what she took a picture of, she saw these really intricate patterns on the concrete floor. So this would be kind of a nice smooth surface where you could potentially see shadow bands. And I was like excited, oh my God, maybe those are the shadow bands. But she said the patterns didn't actually change. So they stayed there for a while. And I wrote to this guy because I was thinking, oh my God, it's a shadow band. I looked up online a person who's like researching those and trying to capture those at every possible total solar eclipse. And he said, well, I mean, considering that they didn't change and that there were lots of skyscrapers or office buildings with glass panes, I mean, this looks like it's more like a repetitive, distorted version of the sun. It's like with the pinhole, except this time you have multiple reflections, and the repetition through all the different glass panes. So he actually says he calls those light bands. Okay, well, at least they're bands, at least they're something. But then, of course, it was like, oh my God, that's another cool effect that no one would ever expect. Yeah, I can go quickly over that. So the older kids were able to watch the solar eclipse from stadiums from outside. They got eclipse glasses. The elementary school kids, they deemed to be not really mature and responsible enough to follow instructions, so they kept them all inside, and they can watch the NASA broadcast on TV. The school was delayed by an hour, so kids were let out later. Some images here. Then, let's see, colleges and museums had their own observing sessions. Of course, there were warnings about traffic. Oh, yeah. Wait a minute, am I missing a slide? I had a slide with you guys, right? I have where I mentioned the colleges and. Oh, yeah, I don't know why you skipped over that. Okay. Oh, it was on the same slide, though. I'm sorry. Okay, so current slide. So yeah, I did want to point out that on the Decatur campus, Susanna was out there with. There we go.
There it is.
Yeah, okay. Although this picture itself is from a different event, because Decatur campus, Susanna is also conducting just sun observations and have Stephen Ramsden come in, who is a NASA outreach person, and he has this awesome setup. But yeah, and then I don't think I have a photo for you on Clarkson campus. But all over the place, Tulloch Science Museum, Fernbank Science Museum, everybody had events that people could attend locally. And yeah, then there, of course, were the traffic warnings. Eclipse today. Yeah, don't stop in the road while the eclipse is going on.
Really?
If you were right by the NSA at the rest area, don't stop. Yeah, kind of, because you was there. I mean, everything's yeah. But, so you see the benefits. So what I'm like, well, we just, yeah, I want to go on the show. Well, this is what it would look like from space. And I have a video which I won't be able to show due to time constraints. Maybe just one.
How big is that shadow? Is that like continental U.S. or?
Well, the penumbra is continental U.S. It engulfs the continental U.S. But the umbra, the central part of the shadow, yeah, on Earth it was just 71 miles, maybe up a little bit higher, 72 miles ago. No, not really. It just seems, well, for us, they seem to be even more rare because Earth is covered 3/4 by water. So if you're mobile, and a lot of cruise ship companies offer Eclipse cruises, so for paying customers, and they can then take cruise ships into the path of totality. So that's what a lot of people who want to view eclipses do. They don't have money. Exactly, and that's why this one was so exciting. Well, unfortunately, I'm going to have to, there were a lot of scientific projects all over the U.S. which were also very impressive, because it turns out you can only learn about the lower chromosphere of the sun during an eclipse. Because we have solar observatories and everything, but they have to block out the sun, and because of the glare, they have to block out a little bit more, so that takes away the information about the lower corona, that's what I want to say, the lower corona of the sun, with the prominences and then going out into space. But due to time, I have to skip over that, but I did want to show you a Google map, that snapshot where it's red, where you have the traffic congestion on the big highways. That pretty much bears the path of the total solar eclipse. Okay, let me show you the next solar eclipse. Talk about the glasses. I can't make a trunk with them. But yeah, one lady had watched with the naked eye and also with bogus glasses. That's another thing you have to watch out for. And she got a burn on her retina that was actually in the shape of a partial solar eclipse, which was pretty scary. Okay, this is the path for the 2024 eclipse, and that's maybe the last thing I wanted to show you. So the greatest eclipse and the greatest duration actually will be in Mexico, will be in central Mexico. So it's going to come in and then go across Texas. Those are probably the best viewing conditions. Now, we have made tentative plans with like a former graduate student colleague way back from Kentucky. He's now an engineer. He lives in the town Carbondale, Illinois, which is also in the center of the town from the 2017. And he's in that town where lightning strikes twice. And in 2024, that town is smack in the center of the path again. Now, it's Illinois though, it is April, so chances are it's humid, and when the temperature drops during, when the amount of light intensity drops, we're going to get condensation again. So I'm thinking, maybe we should try to make arrangements with my son's piano teacher, who happens to have family in Texas. So yeah, they're insane. What is it called? What time of year? Oh, it's April. It's going to be April. I don't have the date on there. April 8th. Yeah, so start planning now. And
Florence, Kentucky, if you want to back up play.
Yeah, but it can
right underneath Cleveland. I mean, right underneath Cincinnati. So it's right.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that's where the water tower is, because we studied there. University of Kentucky.
You can look right in the sun with this?
Yes, actually, probably leading up to the next eclipse, we'll order like 3 or 4. Yeah, those are certified, and you have Gorilla Code is named. They're from the Rainbow. I mean, there are a couple of companies that make certified glasses. Breakdown. Sure.
Dimitri, when you get a chance, I like to listen to those waves.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.